Well, my apologies, sixth grade. We had a little video mishap. We got some weird brightness on the screen. Kind of got cut off, but no problem. We're not going to waste any time. We'll just break today's lesson into two different videos, so no big deal. Just to remind ourselves, we're dealing with volume of cylinders. Volume equals pi times radius squared times height. So here I have my second cylinder that I want to look at with you. Now, we need to remember now as sixth graders that they're not always necessarily going to give us the radius. We remember that the distance from one side of a circle to the other going through the middle is called the diameter. You should also remember that if you know the diameter, you figure out the radius by dividing by 2. So I know the diameter in this situation. Example 1, they gave us just the half distance, which was 4. So I was just able to use 4 because that was the radius. But now they're giving us the entire diameter, which is 6. But I know the diameter, which is 6. So to find the radius, I divide that by 2. 6 divided by 2, I think, is 3. All right? But then I need to square 3. So it's 3 squared, or 3 times 3, which is 9. Okay? Then I can take 9 times my height, because my radius squared is 9. My radius was 3. I squared it. 3 times 3 is 9, times my height, which is 21. So I can just come over here real quick and do 21 times 9. That's not hard. 9 times 1 is 9. 9 times 2 is 18. I get 189. And now it's time to multiply this by pi. Now, sixth grade, this is where you got to make note of something. 21 is a multiple of 7. And since 21 is a multiple of 7, I want to use 22 over 7 for pi, which means that I'm going to take 22 over 7, and I'm going to multiply that by 189, which I'm going to convert into a fraction as 189 over 1. Why do I do this? Well, I do this because I know I can cross-check, because this is divisible by 7. I just need to figure out how many times 7 can go into 189. Well, I know that 7 divided by 7 is 1, so I can just come up here. I do a quick division problem. 189 divided by 7. 7 can go into 18 twice. 2 times 7 is 14. 18 minus 14 is 4. I bring down the 9. 7 can go into 49 7 times. I know there's none left over because 7 times 7 is 49. So my 107 can go into 189 27 times. So my 189 becomes 27. Well, I know that 1 times 1 is 1. I already know that. I can see that here. Then I've got to do 22 times 27. So I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to go ahead and do 22 times 27. 7 times 2 is 14. Put the 4 down, carry the 1. 7 times 2 is 14. Plus the 1 is 15. Put a 0 down so everything lines up with my 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 2 is 4. When I add, remember this is a 4. 4 plus 0 is 4. 5 plus 4 is 9. 1 plus 4, I believe, is 5. So I get 594 over 1. We know that 594 over 1 just equals 594. I get 594 cubic meters. All right, let's see if I can erase the board this time without going all weird here. Ignore the fuzzy looking screen. All right. But let's go ahead and get some dimensions. We're going to do one more example. All right. And we're going to say that this distance right here is 5.5 feet. We're going to say that this distance right here is 3.5 feet. Yes, I know this is not very proportional. Based from what you can see, there is no way that this distance right here can be bigger than this distance right here. just for the sake of math, we're going to ask you to just kind of use your imagination as we save a little time not rewriting cylinders. So anyway, here we go again. We know the diameter, which is 5.5 feet. To figure out the radius, I'm going to have to divide that by 2. So we want to remember our formula. Volume equals pi radius squared times the height. Okay? So I know the diameter, it's 5.5. To figure out the radius, I got to divide that by 2. So it becomes 5.5 divided by 2. Now, 6th grade, this is not a lesson on dividing fractions. You got to remember how to do these things. Okay? We got to turn this into a fraction. 2 times 5 is 10, plus 1 is 11. So it becomes 11 over 2 divided by 2 over 1. But remember, when I'm dividing fractions, the first fraction stays the same. And I've changed the division to a multiplication sign, and the second fraction makes the reciprocal, times 1 over 2. You're going to need to remember that. There's no cross-checking that can happen between a 2 and a 1 and a 2 and an 11. So I just go ahead and multiply, and I get 11 over 4. All right? Now, okay, this is my radius, 11 over 4. But I have to square that. So I've got to take 11 over 4 times 11 over 4. Okay? When I multiply those together, 11 times 11 is 121, and 4 times 4 is 16. Okay? So that's radius squared, now 121 over 16. At this point, we are not really worried about making things mixed numbers or simplifying anything. We can do that later. So let's take this right now and multiply it by our height, which is 3.5 feet. So I'm going to take 121 over 16. I'm going to multiply that by my height. 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7. So it's going to be 7 over 2 times 7 over 2. All right? But here's now where I want to stop and think. And this is what you have to do, 6th graders. You have to have some forethought when you're doing problems. You have to, in this situation, think. I'm using fractions. So what am I going to use for pi? Say it out loud. Scream it into the screen. Yes, I hear you saying it. You're going to have to use 22 over 7. So if this is my radius squared, and this is my height, I know that eventually I'm going to have to bring in 22 over 7. So I have to use some common sense, and I have to use what I know about multiplication. And that is, it doesn't matter what order I multiply the numbers in. As long as I do it right, I'm going to get the same answer. And so we really, you know, a lot of times our parents and our teachers don't say, don't do it the easy way. Mr. Swack is going to say on this video, even if your parents are listening, when it comes to math, do it the easiest way. Don't give yourself more work than you have to. Have enough forethought to realize, oh, I'm using 22 over 7. There's a whole lot of cross-checking that can happen here, and I can get much smaller numbers. Why deal with 121 times 7 if I don't have to? Because I can cross-check the 7s. That becomes a 1. That becomes a 1. I have the 2 here and the 22 here. I can cross-check those. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 22 divided by 2 is 11. Then if I just do that part, I see, well, I can do 1 times 11 is 11, and 1 times 1 is 1. So that gives me 11 over 1, or just 11. Okay? So that leaves me with 121 over 16 times 11 over 1. So I'm doing that, and I'm looking here, and I'm thinking, well, I can't cross-check, but I need to be able to now multiply this. But it made it a little easier than doing that. So I'm going to do 16 times 1, which I know is 16. Then I'm going to have to come over here to the side, and I'm going to actually just have to go ahead and do 121 times 11. Okay? So I'm going to do 1 times 1, which is 1. 1 times 2, which is 2. 1 times 1, which is 1. Put the 0 down. 1 times 1, which is 1. 1 times 2, which is 2. 1 times 1, which is 1. When I add these numbers together, 1 and 0 is 1. 2 plus 1 is 3. 1 plus 2 is 3. Nothing and 1 is 1. I get 1,331. So I end up with 1,331 over 16. How many times has Mr. Swack said, 6th graders, you have to stay organized? You got to be organized with your work. You got to be careful with your work. You got to be organized. You got to be slow. You got to be thorough. Volume of cylinders is that. And you're going to have to do some figuring today. So now I've ended up with, I bring over my other thing, 1,331 over 16. So let's revisit. We started with 5.5. We divided that by 2. We ended up with 11 over 4. Okay? We squared 11 over 4, ended up with 121 over 16. We came down here and realized that we had to times that by the height and by pi. So we brought that in and we did some cross-checking, and we ended up doing some cross-checking with the 7 over 2 times the 22 over 7 and getting 11 over 1. So we came up here, we did 121 over 16 times 11 over 1. We ended up with 1,331 over 16. That is where we're at right now. Now we actually just have to go and do this division problem. 1,331 over 16. Well, let's think about what's going to happen here. I'm thinking about 16, all right? And I'm thinking, well, all right, that's going to round to 20, so I can use 2 and 13, all right? So I'm thinking, well, 2 can go into 13 6 times. But 16 is significantly smaller than 20 on some level. So I'm just going to try 16 times 7 instead of 6 to see what I get. 7 times 6 is 42. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 4 is 11. I'm still a ways away. So logically, I'm going to try 16 times 8. 8 times 6 is 48. Put the 8 down, carry the 4. 8 times 1 is 8, plus 4 is 12. I get 128. Well, that seems like it could work with 133. So I'm going to put 8. I'm going to put 128. I'm going to subtract those. I can't do 3 minus 8, so I'm going to borrow from that 3, make it a 2. 13 minus 8 is 5. 2 minus 2 is nothing. 1 minus 1 is nothing. I'm going to put a 0 down. So I go back to my 2. 2 can go into 5 twice. So I'm going to think 16 times 2. Well, I know that 16 times 2 is 32. That seems like it's a little bit far away. So I'm going to try 16 times 3 just to see what happens. 3 times 6 is 8. Carry the 4. Well, 3 times 6 is not 8. 3 times 6 is 48. Put the 8 down, carry the 4. 3 times 1 is 3. Plus 4 is 7. I get 70. No. Wow. That is some bad math. Okay? Let's pretend like the last 20 seconds did not happen, because 16 times 3 is not 78. So yeah, I know, 6th graders, you can laugh at me, yes. Even Mr. Swack messes up. And I will confess, that was some very bad math. All right, let's try 16 times 3 again. 3 times 6 is not 48. 3 times 6 is 18. We're going to put the 8 down. We're going to carry the 1. 3 times 1 is 3. Plus the 1 is 4. 16 times 3 is 48. 48 works with 51. I knew I could do this problem. All right. And so I'm here, and I get 3. Okay? And so minus 48. I get a remainder of 3. I get 83. 3 left over. 16 is my denominator. If I want to take it back to where I was with 1,331 over 16. 16 can go into that 83 times. And then 3 over 16. But I have to round it to the nearest whole number. So remember with fractions, when I round things to the nearest whole number, how is that going to work? Well, remember what I need to do. I need to look at 3 over 16. If 3 over 16 is less than half, I'm going to round down and I'm going to keep it 83. If 3 over 16 is a half or more than half, I'm going to round it up and make it 84. Well, I know that 3 is not half of 16. 8 is half of 16. Because if I cut 16 in half, 16 divided by 2 is 8. But I only have 3. So I have less than half. So I'm going to round down. And that answer is going to be 83, rounded to the nearest whole number. All right, I'll be available to help with this assignment Thursday morning, April the 23rd. Talk to you later, 6th grade. Bye.